Welcome! This video is about classroom management. It's all about tips for teachers of middle school students. Part 1 will deal more with structures and Part 2 will deal with engagement. To be a good teacher, you need to create an effective learning environment. Students need to feel safe, secure, and comfortable in order to do their best learning. Middle school students are growing more now physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially than any other time in their life. They really need a very structured and secure learning environment in order to do their best learning. The most important thing when you enter the classroom is to believe. You have to have faith in yourself. When I've given advice to teachers over the years, they come up with, but what if this doesn't they won't. If you don't believe, it won't work. Your affect, the way in which you present yourself to your students, must convey confidence. When you ask them to follow a procedure, you must believe that there is no other option, and then they will believe there is no other option. Consistency and organization. I will go into more detail about each of these items, but you need to have a seating chart, you need to have your procedures in place, opening activities. I encourage you to overplan and not to rush. Seating chart. First of all, the arrangement of your desks or tables. You need to make sure that every student has access to the teaching focal point. They need to be able to hear and see you. So rows are pretty easy. They're facing the front of the room. If you're going to have tables or groups of desks, you need to arrange it so that every child can turn and see you. Do not set it up where you have a group of 4 desks and 2 students are looking directly forward and 2 students have their backs squarely to you. You're setting those students up for failure if you don't give them the opportunity to see you. You choose where the students sit. Some teachers will say, everybody sit where you want. If it doesn't work, we'll rearrange things. No. You want to choose from the very beginning because you want to set the environment from day one. Have the chart ready on the first day. Take your roster. I always put it in alphabetical order so I can memorize names. However you want to do it, but have it ready when they walk into the room. Change the seating often. Middle school kids are pretty social, so you want to change it up every so often to keep them on their toes, so to speak. Let's talk about procedures. Discipline versus procedures. Discipline all by itself just becomes a power struggle between the students and teachers. We're not about fighting with 12-year-olds. We're about creating an effective learning environment. Procedures are just expectations that become the norm. You should have some specific classroom procedures. You should have only 3 to 5 explicit rules that are non-negotiable. Some classrooms might have 10 or 15 rules. That's too much. It's too confusing for the students. Some teachers say, I like the students to make the rules, that they have buy-in. I don't totally agree with that. You could have a discussion with the students and kind of lead them in that direction, but you should have an idea. It's your classroom. You should have very specific ideas of what you expect to happen in your classroom. Some examples may be talk and turn, line up in before you come into the classroom, whatever you think is important for your learning environment. I want to caution you not to have rules such as be polite or show respect, because that's too ambiguous. What one person considers polite, another person may not consider polite. Practice. You will need to practice the procedures with the students until they become automatic. They're just going to be the norm, so you practice over and over. Consistency is extremely important. Once the procedures have been shared with your students, you need to adhere to them yourself. You cannot have them line up on Monday to go into class and then on Tuesday let them run into the room and just sit wherever they feel like sitting. You're sending them mixed messages if you're not consistent with your routines and procedures. Having a consistent routine eliminates the opportunities for student mistakes. They can't make a mistake if it's the same every day. Opening activity. Start each class period with the same opening activity every day, the same kind of procedure. That way the students will know exactly what is expected of them and it will become a normal routine. Plan some more. You want to break the class up into 20-minute chunks. Students will tend to lose it after about 20 minutes, so you want to keep their attention by changing it up. You also want to have backup plans just in case something doesn't go the way you expected it to go. 10 minutes of dead time can create a lot of chaos in a classroom. Also, it's unacceptable to waste that time. Every minute is precious. And do not rush. And what I mean by that is make sure you take the time at the beginning of the school year to really establish your routines and procedures. Some teachers want to jump right into the curriculum because they are frightened that they're not going to cover it all. But I would submit you're going to cover more if you really establish an effective learning environment from the very beginning. Take a few extra days and make sure the students really understand what is expected of them in your classroom. Here are some specific helpful hints. Be present in the classroom. Even though these students are getting physically bigger, they still have a need for attention and reassurance. So really be interested in them whenever they walk into the classroom. Be there. Wait for quiet to talk. Do not talk over the students. This is extremely important. If the students are being chatty and noisy in the classroom and you just keep talking and droning on, what you are teaching those students is that what you have to say is not important, that you do not need to be respected. You need to make sure they are quiet before you talk. Now, some teachers say, well, my goodness, if I stand there, they'll just keep talking forever, which is kind of true with middle school students. So you need to have some kind of attention getter. I used to say, if you can hear me, clap twice. Clap, clap. And then half the class would kind of look up, and then I would do it again. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Clap, clap, clap. Ears and eyes up here. And then when they were all quiet, I would begin my conversation. You could also start to talk and then stop. Today we will be doing, and then they'll all kind of look. And then when they're quiet, you begin your talking and your instructions. Don't ask questions with unintended, undesired answers or ultimatums. Teachers will say something very sarcastically because they're letting emotion get into it. And they'll say, if you don't want to learn today, just leave. And the student gets up and leaves. Then the teacher just goes nuts. Oh my gosh, that child just walked out of my classroom, blah, blah, blah. Well, you asked him to. You gave them that choice. Remember that when you say something, they may take it quite literally. You need to be careful how you express yourself. Provide structures. Set it up in your class to give the students opportunities for success, not failure. Make sure the structures are such that they understand what's expected of them at all times. And do not negotiate. And what I mean by this is sometimes teachers will provide those structures and set up great routines and procedures, and then they'll sit there and they'll try to convince the students to like the idea. They will try to convince the students that it's a good idea, and they'll go back and forth trying to explain to the students. You don't need to explain to them. If you set up a nice, fair, firm, and consistent classroom, they'll like it. They want structure because their bodies are playing tricks on them right now, and they want to be able to know what's expected of them at all times. More hints. Provide choice, but make all choices something that you want to happen. For example, a student is not seated and you want him to sit down, so you say, you may sit here or there, and you wait for him to make his decision. You've empowered him to make a choice, but all the choices are something you want because you want him seated. Check the planner, notebook, if you have some kind of a procedure for that. You want to do that during quiet, structured seat work time so that there are no opportunities for students to kind of lose it because they're not focused while your back is turned to them. Have them focus on some kind of seat work or at desk work, and then you can walk around the room quietly and check the planner. Anticipate and remove. If you know students are going to bump into each other and maybe even cause a little conflict when they get up to get some supplies for a project, then you want to excuse one row at a time or one table at a time, or maybe create a traffic flow procedure where they go down the row, get the supplies, and come back into the top of the row. Want to remove the opportunities for problems. Don't take it personal. If a student has given you kind of a hard time that day, remember they're going to leave the room. They're very egocentric at this age. He or she is not going to give you a second thought, and you're going to go home and stew about it and raise your blood pressure. For what? Don't take it personally. They didn't mean it personally. Don't make it personal. Over the years, teachers have wanted me to have revenge on some child and punish them for all this grief. They made it personal. It's not personal. Why are you arguing with a 12-year-old? Say something positive to your class every day. It has a really good effect because they leave the room feeling good about themselves. You can always find some little grain of something good that happened in class that day. And it also will make you feel better because you've thought about something good and positive for that day. There is power in numbers. Conspire with your adult teammates. Nothing's more powerful than for students to know that the adults in their world talk to each other. Have similar procedures, perhaps all everybody can have the same heading on their paper. Then students don't have to remember from one class to another what they're supposed to do. Collaborate and coordinate. Certain strategies work with certain students. Replicate that in all their classes so the student can be successful. Also coordinate. Don't have a math test and a language arts test the same Friday. Do not have research projects in science and social studies the same week. Coordinate with a discipline buddy. Have a plan where if a student is having a bad day in your class, they can go to another classroom. Now, remember that you want to send them to a different classroom. For example, if they're an 8th grader, to a 6th grade classroom. Do not send them to a room with their peers, because not only will they disrupt your class, they will disrupt the other class. Also, it is extremely powerful if all the teachers talk to the parents at the same time. So if a child is having a certain issue, the parents might get a little aha. Well, if they're having a problem with all the teachers, maybe my child needs to work on this issue. It's extremely important to focus on behavior, not personalities. You do not want to bring emotion into it. Remember, cause and effect. If student does X, Y happens. Quick interventions. Positive communication is just very powerful. For example, if you tell all the students to put an answer in their head, you've given them a question and one of the students yells out the answer before they should, you just right away say, "Wow, I love your enthusiasm." But remember, answer stays in our head so everybody gets their think time. Nonverbal clues. If you want a quiet classroom, you have to model quiet. So you can give them a little look or a little shake of the head. You can tell them, everybody turn to page 50. You write page 50 on the board. And when someone shouts out what page, you just quietly point to the board. Clean slate daily. If you had a bad day yesterday, come into the classroom today. Today's a new day. Today's going to be a great day. You want to start every day off with a clean slate. Be objective. Remember to focus on the behaviors, not on the personality of the students. And avoid familiarity. You're not their friend. You're their teacher. Don't get down to their level. They have plenty of friends. They want to know that they can count on you as that adult in their life that will give them the structures they need to feel good about themselves and to feel safe and secure. Okay, the reality is some choices equal consequences. Not every student is going to respond to our great plan here, so you need to give them a warning, private if possible. Try not to embarrass them in front of their friends, because that's just going to evoke some anger and some defensive behavior. Separate from the group. They're very social at this age, so if you could separate them from the group. Forfeit privileges. That might be something that you have at your school, some kind of process for that. Discipline buddy, we already talked about that. If you have a partner on your team that you can trade students when they're having a bad day in your class. Parent contact. It's also very powerful to have the student call the parent while you're standing there and tell the student, you tell your parent what you're doing right now. And referral to administration. And this is your last resort, because when you send a student to the principal, what you're telling that student is that you can't handle it, that the principal is the real authority. You will find that engagement will eliminate many of your discipline problems. So we will address that in Classroom Management Part 2. So be on the lookout for that video. Here are some suggested reading. These are all great authors. I've read them all, and they have some great information. I hope you found this video useful. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for the latest updates and be on the lookout for Classroom Management Part 2. Visit our webpage for copies of this presentation plus additional teacher resources. Thank you for visiting.